Chemours MPDES Industrial Permit NC 0090042 in Bladen County, North Carolina. I'd like to call this public hearing to order. My name is Amy Chapman. I'll be the hearing officer tonight. I was also the hearing officer 2 nights ago in Wilmington. I am the Transportation Branch Supervisor over in the Water Quality Permitting section of the Division of Water Resources. And I'd also like to recognize some other Division of Water Resource staff that are here tonight virtually. We have Richard Rogers, he's our director. Don't think we have Julie Gribb yet, but she'll be joining. She's our deputy director. Sushma Masmore, she's our deputy secretary. Dr. Sergey Chernikov, hey Sushma. Dr. Sergey Chernikov will be doing a presentation shortly. You'll hear that. And of course, Amir Adriani is going to be our timekeeper. And Doug Dowden is also in attendance. I don't know if Jeff Popart's here, but he is my supervisor. And of course, we have Anna Gurney, our public information officer. So thank you all for joining. This hearing is being held under the authority of Title 15A of the North Carolina Administrative Code, Chapter 2H0101. In North Carolina, facilities that require state permits must adhere to the requirements and procedures pursuant to General Statute 143-215.1 for the control of point source water pollution. For any application, the director may determine that it is in the public's interest to hold a public hearing to receive public comments and additional information on the proposed project. The Environmental Protection Agency has authorized the North Carolina Department of Quality to issue or deny these permits. The purpose of this hearing is to solicit water quality related comments from all interested parties regarding the draft discharge permit and proposed groundwater treatment system at the Chemours Fayetteville Works facility that would substantially reduce PFAS entering the Cape Fear River via contaminated groundwater. As reflected in the permit, Chemours is required to remove at least 99% of PFAS from the contaminated groundwater before discharge. Currently, contaminated groundwater flowing into the river is not intercepted or treated. The specific permit number is NC 0090042, as previously stated. I realize this may be an important issue for many people here tonight, so please realize that as hearing officer, I can only consider comments that are directly related to the water quality impacts, the Chemours permit, and related treatment of the groundwater quality. In order to conduct this hearing in a fair and orderly fashion, I'm asking that everyone observe certain conduct during this hearing to make it fair and orderly. I'm asking that everyone observe certain protocols and rules. The hearing's purpose is to hear your comments. Please be advised, this is not a question and answer session. As a hearing officer, I may ask a speaker to repeat a statement for clarity. Cross-examination of any speaker will not be allowed. We ask that everyone respect the rights of others that speak without interruption. A written record of these proceedings will be prepared by the hearing officer. For this reason, the audio of this hearing is being recorded and will be made available to you after the hearing on our website. The record for this hearing will remain open until June 24th, 2022 at 6 p.m. Written comments received by June 24th, 2022 at 6 p.m. will be included as part of the record. Equal weight will be given to both written and oral comments. Before we ask for comments from the public and the applicant, I will ask Dr. Sergey Chernikov to present information regarding the permit and proposed treatment system. After his presentation, there will be a brief presentation by Julie Gribb that will take a few minutes. I don't think she has any slides, but it will just be a presentation, a verbal presentation. So Sergey, if you're ready, we'll go ahead and do your presentation.
Good evening. Can you see my screen? Peter?
Yes, we can. We can see your title slide.
Oh, thank you very much, Peter. Good evening. My name is Dr. Sergey Chernikov. I am an environmental engineer and a permit writer in the Industrial Wastewater Permitting Unit. My presentation tonight will focus on the proposed NPDES permit for outfall 004 at Chemours facility. Groundwater from decades of contamination from the site continue to flow into the Cape Fear River along the facility's riverbanks. This is the largest recurring source of PFAS compound from Chemours site to the Cape Fear River. The consent order requires treatment of the groundwater from Chemours site. The facility must remove at least 99% of the PFAS compounds. In order to meet the consent order requirements, Chemours applied for a new NPDES permit for the discharge of treated groundwater, treated stormwater, and treated surface water seeps located on its property. Currently, the groundwater that is contaminated by PFAS compounds flows without any interruption and contaminates Cape Fear River. The facility proposes to install a barrier wall that will intercept contaminated groundwater. The facility will also use wells behind the wall to extract contaminated groundwater treated in the wastewater treatment plant and discharge much cleaner wastewater into the Cape Fear River. The subsurface wall will be approximately 6,000 feet long, 70 to 80 feet deep, and approximately 2 feet thick. It will consist of bentonite and cement mixed with soil. The barrier wall is designed to intercept the flow of contaminated groundwater to the Cape Fear River. Extraction wells will be installed behind the wall to collect the contaminated groundwater stopped by the wall. This contaminated groundwater will be pumped to a treatment system for the removal of PFAS compounds. The proposed permit applies to this treatment system. The proposed NPDES permit for outfall 004 will require treatment to remove at least 99% of the PFAS compounds collected from the groundwater extraction wells, stormwater, and seeps near the riverbanks. The permit will also have numeric limits for 3 indicator parameters, including GNX, PFMOAA, and PMPA. The permit will also have comprehensive stream sampling to assess loading of PFAS in the river, as well as the wall is being installed and after completion of the wall. The permit will have operation and maintenance plan, which is expected to produce removal efficiencies above 99% after initial optimization period. The NPDES permit for outfall 004 will also have the whole effluent toxicity limit to evaluate impacts on the aquatic organisms in the receiving stream. The permit will have re-evaluation requirement for the numeric limits for 3 indicator parameters after 1 year of operation. It will have monitoring for 55 PFAS compounds in the influent and the effluent from the treatment system. It will have monitoring for metals in the effluent, including silver, cadmium, lead, and thallium. The flow limit for this permit will be 2.38 million gallons per day based on monthly average flow. However, the system is capable of treating 2.9 million gallons per day of peak flow. And finally, I would like to make a few points. Currently, there is no remediation of groundwater at this portion of the Chemours facility. Without this proposed NPDES permit, the facility cannot begin remediation of the groundwater. The requirement to remove at least 99% of PFAS compounds is self-tightening. As the influent concentration decreases over time, the enforceable effluent limit will also decrease. The permit limits are based on PFAS removal capability, considering the presence of dissolved metals and other constituents in the groundwater. Removal of the indicator parameters will also remove other PFAS compounds. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergey. And now, Julie Gribb, would you like to do your presentation?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Sergey, can you go back on another 1 or 2 slides?
Yes, that's what I have now.
I want to see a little bit more. There we go. Okay, it didn't show up on my screen. I'm sorry. All right, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Chernikov. My name is Julie Gribb. I'm Deputy Director of the Division of Water Resources. And I just want to go over a few key points that Sergey made briefly. If you see, I want you to really look at this picture. And the picture on the left is the current situation. From decades of contamination, the largest recurring source of PFAS from Chemours is the groundwater flowing to the Cape Fear River right now. In order to stop this, they were required by the consent order to stop that flow of groundwater and to do that with the barrier wall. That will significantly reduce the amount of PFAS getting to the river. Of course, you do not want this backed up groundwater to go around the wall or to go over the wall. So therefore, they will put in extraction wells, pump it to the treatment system that is recognized as this permit, and treat the PFAS. We would like best available technology must be used, and we will strive to always make sure they are using that best available technology. This is probably the largest, and this size and magnitude of this system is the only one I know of in this country. It will have a unique treatment. It'll be very complex, and it's one of the few that are treating groundwater and not surface water. So again, we will want to stop that flow of PFAS going to the river, and we want to treat it. And so that is the points I wanted to reiterate. I look forward to hearing all your comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julie. All right, thank you both for your presentations. So I will begin calling on speakers in the order of registration. When you have finished speaking, when everyone has finished speaking, if others in the audience would like to comment or have any time speaking, they'll be given the opportunity to do so if there's time. To ensure that our records are accurate, please clearly state your name and, if applicable, the organization that you're representing. In addition, we ask that you identify other associations that you may have that have bearing on your input tonight. This will be useful in assessing the information and comments you provide. To ensure that everyone has the opportunity to speak, we're going to limit the time to 3 minutes. And Amir is going to be handling the timer on the screen. You'll see it. Comments. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. So Amir will hold up I'm sorry, I'm doing this as if we're in person. Amir will actually have the 3 minutes show up on the screen when you have 3 minutes left, and then he'll have 30 seconds, and then time is up when your time is up, just to give you an idea of how long you've got to speak still. Comments that address specific scientific or technical points of the draft permit and proposed treatment system will be the most useful in our review process. If possible, speakers are asked to provide a written copy of their comments and a business card or other form of written document with their name printed legibly. The hearing record will remain open until June 24th, 2022 at 6 p.m. Anyone wishing to make a written statement is welcome to do so by that time, either to the email address publiccomments@ncdenr.gov or the mailing address listed in the public hearing notice. Based on the public comments received, I will evaluate all information and statements and make a recommendation regarding the final decision on whether to modify the permit and or proposed treatment system to the Director, Richard Rogers, of the Division of Water Resources. So with that, I will begin calling on speakers. The first one that we have is Dana Sargent.
Dana, you are unmuted now.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
y'all
but
hear
it's fairly faint.
Can you hear me better now?
A little better.
Interesting. How about this?
Very good.
Okay. First of all, thank you for responding to Cape Fear River Watch's request and that of those who signed the Clean Cape Fear petition to extend public comment and hold this hearing. And thank you all for your recent strong work on PFAS. Regarding this permit, first, I'd like to share a concern that DEQ staff member Julie Gribb made presentations at both this hearing and the in-person hearing, the goal of which seems to me to be sort of to sell this permit to the public. And if I've misunderstood the intention of these presentations, I do apologize, and I would look forward to hearing from Ms. Gribb on that. But that is how they were received by me, and I don't feel as though that is appropriate from DEQ. Regarding this permit, these comments are to be submitted on behalf of myself. Cape Fear River Watch's comments will be delivered in writing by Southern Environmental Law Center tomorrow. EPA's June 15th announcement of the health advisory levels for Gen X at 10 ppt, PFOS at 0.02, and PFOA at 0.004, or 4 parts per quadrillion, underscores the need to ensure that not one drop of PFAS enters the Cape Fear River, the drinking water supply for 500,000 people that also happens to sit in the midst of a global biodiversity hotspot, supporting a number of endangered and threatened species and sustaining our state's multi-billion-dollar fishing and tourism industries. EPA's health advisory goal for PFOA should be accurate since they've been studying PFOA since 2002, and we know that PFOA is in the groundwater on site. With a health advisory level of 0.004 below the detection limit, that the allowable level, if DEQ is to honor EPA's health advisory levels, needs to be set at non-detect. And of course, DEQ should honor EPA's health advisory level. The Table 3+ average influence submitted by Chemours for the waters that will be managed by this permit was 139,000 parts per trillion. 1% of that allowable under this permit is 1,390 parts per trillion. And let's not forget that non-targeted analysis required by the consent order found 257 unknown PFAS. So that extremely high allowable level of 1,390 is accounting for just a fraction of the 300 or more PFAS the company is releasing that we're not just tracking yet. And even without our comments, the law requires that DEQ analyze available technology and set limits based on that work. We know the GAC system this permit is routing this water through can reduce PFAS to non-detect. We know there is concern about iron in the water and affecting the system's ability. And if that is the case, DEQ is required to analyze that, along with any technology that we know exists that could eliminate that iron issue. We know the 99% limit was clearly not set with this analysis done, and that is against the law. And finally, we all know here, as it is grating on our souls, that Chemours has decided to spend their time and money on ads, the website, a Facebook page, TV commercials, and a petition supporting this permit. And that should be a red flag. And I know DEQ does not want to align itself with Chemours on this. And you may say, I've heard staffers say that they think the GAC will hold up and keep the levels at non-detect. But we all know that if the permit does not hold Chemours to non-detect, they won't hold themselves to it. We have 50 years of history teaching us this company and its predecessor need regulating, and we're counting on you to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Excuse me. All right, our next speaker is Jennifer Green.
Can you hear me? Hi,
Yes.
you can hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Thank you for hosting this event and for allowing me the opportunity to comment. Chemours has been allowed to poison 500,000 people without any real consequence for 40 years. We've been overexposed to PFAS levels 2 to 3 times the national average due to the Gen X exposure study. Chemours can do the right thing. We obviously know that. They can build a filtration system to remove PFAS from the water to non-detect levels. It is possible. A town in Windsor, New York had PFAS leak into their water from an Air Force base. They immediately installed an activated carbon filtration system. In 4 months, they had undetectable PFAS readings. Yet we're stuck paying $600 a year in bottled water delivery, plus increased water prices because we can't drink the water that Chemours ruined, and they broke. My parents retired in 2013 and moved to Wilmington from upstate New York. I moved with them for a fresh start. 2 years later, I became extremely ill with a rare autoimmune disorder at 33 years old. Only 125,000 people in the United States have this disorder and get it only by being exposed to a toxin. There is no cure. I am being treated weekly with low dose chemotherapy in 6 months, every 6 months with chemo infusions, to stop my immune system from attacking my lungs, my heart, my nerves, my bone marrow, my nervous system, and my lymph nodes. My illness is like lupus, MS, and dementia on steroids. 3 years later, after my diagnosis, my father gets stage 4 cancer, and now he has stage 3 kidney failure. But don't worry, he doesn't have to fight alone because his neighbor and his friend has gone through multiple rounds of cancer, and he will talk him through it. While my parents manage this, another friend and neighbor dies of cancer, and then another dies. In February, my dog dies of cancer, and my neighbor's dogs have died of cancer. I convinced my father to participate in the Gen X exposure study in 2020 with me, and I overheard the lab techs shocked by the massive thyroid cancer hotspots here. I also overheard the other participants in the waiting room that were all sick with immune issues and cancer. I am here to remind you that we are people, we have families. I have nieces that are 11 and 7 that are going to lose their beloved grandfather and their aunt due to Chemours. I just want everyone to remember my face, or you can't see which, and I want them to remember my mother's excruciating pain that she's losing her husband and her daughter due to 1%. There's still 1%. So I need them to understand that there are consequences. We are the consequences of this 1% still. That's not enough. This Band-Aid is not enough. They broke the state, and this is not enough. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker is Bridget Taurant.
Okay, you guys can hear me?
Barely.
Oh, is this better?
Much better.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bridget Tarrant, and I'm a Wilmington resident. Thank you, first of all, for having this virtual meeting to allow people that can't be in person during this time to actually have their voices heard. Now, I did not grow up in Wilmington, but shortly after I moved here, I found that out about Gen X and that people living in Wilmington have been chronically overexposed to PFAS for decades. PFAS, which has been linked to numerous detrimental health problems, as we just heard the prior speaker mention. And then also, as Dana mentioned, research has shown that any exposure to PFAS is detrimental to your health. There's no reason to allow any continued discharge of these forever chemicals into our drinking water source, since Chemours does have access to technology to remove all measurable forever chemicals before releasing it into the treated groundwater into the river. DEQ and DEQ only has the power to require Chemours to do this in order to protect the community's health. DEQ also has the authority to include in this permit that Chemours takes this treated groundwater and recycles it to use in their cooling and production waters, like they do in West Virginia. If this permit is not changed, more than 500,000 North Carolinians will continue to be exposed to the dangerous levels of PFAS. I am fortunate enough to have been able to purchase reverse osmosis water to drink and cook with. However, many Wilmington residents have been will be forced to continue to drink this contaminated water since they can't afford to purchase clean drinking water. These same people cannot continue to be exposed to these toxic chemicals if the DEQ does not change its permit. I'm asking the DEQ, please do not allow Chemours to legally release any unnecessary PFAS into our drinking water supply. You have the power to help more than 500,000 North Carolinians live healthier, more productive lives. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Suzanne. Okay, up next, Michael Dickey.
Living here as well. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The timer hasn't started, that's what I was
Yeah.
asking. Thank you for the chance to speak on this. And I do agree with some of the previous statements that this does feel a bit like part of a campaign to improve Chemours' reputation and paint them as a hero by working to stop their own pollution. And so my question, which I know this is not a question and answer, would be who will be monitoring the results of the treatment? Will we have on-site state employees to do so, given that this is a company that should never be trusted again to act in a responsible manner? Their money spent on advertising, stating that they're doing their part and hope others will do theirs, proves in my mind that they still take no responsibility for their horrible actions that should have resulted in criminal prosecution. So who exactly are they hoping will do their part to clean up the mess that Chemours made? And while this treatment system or some sort of treatment system is clearly needed, if it's not heavily monitored, it seems like an opportunity for them to continue acting as poorly as they have in the past. As well as if the previous statements just made that there's capability to reduce PFAS contamination to 100%, then yes, I also agree. Why would we allow for any contamination to continue if that capability exists? There seems to be no logical reason to not make it 100%. So that's it. I'll give the rest of my time, but thank you for the chance to speak.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, up next we have Terry Mann.
So I don't see Terry on the list. There are, however, a number of people who I see as call-in users, which means they're calling in on the telephone. Terry, if you are one of these call-in users on the phone, can you please press *3 on your phone to raise your hand? That's why I know you are here. And that goes for anyone else too. If you're a registered speaker and we call on you and you're on the telephone, just press *3. Because when I see call-in users, I just see numbers and I don't know who you are. And give me a second here. All right, so I don't see anyone raising their hands.
I don't either. I just looked too.
Okay.
We'll come back to you, Terry. Okay, Ryan McDonald.
All right, Ryan, you are now unmuted.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much for coming to speak today. I'm glad I was able to attend this. This gives me a lot more information about what's going on in this community. I have a doctorate in organometallic chemistry. I came to Wilmington 15 years ago after getting my doctorate at Arizona State University. And we've settled down here. I have children, and then since having children, we have learned about this PFAS problem, which worries us quite a bit, as others have said. We have found a way that we believe has protected us from PFAS, but many other people don't have that responsibility, and we are looking at our own studies, we are getting our blood tested through the GenX study to see what kind of issues we may have with GenX in our own system. The biggest problems I tend to see is that others have said the 99%, given the amount of PFAS that's been detected and the varied differences of PFAS that's been detected, 99% isn't enough to give us necessarily below the EPA limit, and ideally the better limit would be no PFAS at all, especially since so many of us have had exposure for a long time before we could deal with this problem. The other concern I have is that even if we have a low limit, there's no way to know what amount of Gen X and other PFAS are in the stream system already. How much is in the wells, how much is in the dirt and the mud that can come up later on, to mingle with maybe a low or a legal amount, and makes the total amount that we get by the citizens above that amount. The other concern I have is it looked like the wall was only slightly above ground. We have had a number of events since I moved in where the rainwater has risen quite a bit above
1 minute.
that line. And I want to make sure that, there is research to look at how much rainwater is needed to make sure that that water does not go above that wall. I've seen numbers that people suggest above 16 inches is ideal. But I would want to make sure that that is researched. And so that sort of event, or even a sort of event where we had with Florence, where we had 31 inches, where those sorts of problems do not come up and make the problem worse. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Okay, next up would be Beth Marcassino. I hope I said that correctly.
Beth, you are now unmuted.
Thank you. My name is Beth Marcassino, and I'm with North Carolina Stop Gen X in Our Water. I represent over 7,000 members, and we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The Clean Water Act requires that companies use best technology available to control discharges. DEQ needs to update their draft permit to require PFAS discharges at the site based on the best technology that exists and controls PFAS at non-detect levels. We already know that CFPUA is installing a $43 million GAC system downstream for Wilmington residents, and Wilmington residents will have to start paying for this $43 million system as soon as next month. This is something that Chemours should be paying for, not our downstream residents. So we believe that Chemours should be equally installing the same type of technology that CFPUA is installing. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we have Michael Waters.
Michael, you are unmuted and you can speak now.
We can't hear you, Michael.
It's showing as unmuted on my end. Maybe Michael's away from the computer or something.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I had to switch the camera, sorry. I'm Michael Waters. I'm the founder of Grays Creek Resident United Against PFAS in Our Wells and North Carolina Stop Gen X in Our Wells. Basically, our big concern is the people right around the facility is you have a dam going in that's going 40 feet below sea level that backs up water along the river, a little bit along Willis Creek, a little bit along where
We lost you, Michael. Can you hear him, Peter?
No, he cut in for just a split second. There we go.
Okay, so our concern is the people that are right by the facility is you dam up water, groundwater that should be corrected under a corrective action plan, which, by the way, got rejected. Then basically we need a corrective action plan. We need to know the environmental impacts of backing up that quantity of water, because it will get into the aquifers. Like the guy talked about, the flow of water during hurricanes. The water got 25 feet above the shoreline, not 16 inches, not 16, not 18, 21 feet. And that was Hurricane Mitchell. So, yes, I'm not so concerned about how the water goes, because you know what? It doesn't come my way that way. It comes from damming it up. And I live half a mile from the fence line of Chemours, and that's where our concern is. I've seen nothing on a corrective action plan that addresses the remediation or a corrective measure study on the remediation of the water, groundwater, not surface water. And we believe that, one, DEQ agenda was wrong. The second thing is, we want our water protected.
Are you still there, Michael? Sometimes you have to love technology and sometimes you have to hate it. Michael, if we need to come back to you at the end to finish up your thoughts, we'll do that. Let's go to the next speaker, Clarice Reber.
I think you were moving along.
Was this his name addiction?
Is that Clarice?
Clarice, you are unmuted now. You can speak.
Okay, thank you. Now I'm keeping here. First, I would like to thank you for this virtual public hearing. It is important for some of us to avoid large crowds. Appreciate the virtual situation. The Chemours draft permit, I think, has some serious flaws, and I'll speak to a few of them. One, the wall barrier is proposed to handle a certain amount of rainfall. We seem to have a lot of large rainfall events in this neck of the woods. I live in Wilmington. It seems to me that we need to make sure that it can handle a large rain event. In fact, some of our major storms it needs to be able to handle. Secondly, the proposal allows PFAS to contaminate our ground and surface water still. My grandchildren were born here. Now, I've only lived here about 8 years, but they've had exposure to this water most of their lives. They now drink bottled water. But PFAS exposure has been shown to have significant health effects mentioned earlier in these hearings. Think of the costs of medical care for these people as they age. We don't know what's going to happen 20 years from now. So we should require eliminate any release of PFAS to our waters. There is a technology to do it, and we should require that they use it. We should require also that any water be recycled for other industrial uses, not discharged into our ground and surface waters. The other issue I'd like to speak to is the amount of PFASs that are being monitored and controlled. And I think we need to make sure that we are monitoring all of our PFAS. We really don't want to go through this pollution elimination legal process again in a few years as another PFAS, or someone creates a new or old one, a new one. We really want to make sure that we're monitoring all possible pollution.
1 minute.
Again, thank you for this opportunity to speak. Please do not allow Chemours to release any PFAS into the ground and surface waters of our rivers and area. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is Brian Beauregard.
Evening. Thank you for having this hearing. It does, the technology does allow us to not mix in crowds. My concern as a homeowner, I'm not a member of any group. I'm strictly a homeowner. And this issue goes on to cause us a little distress because for the past several years, our bill to provide ourselves with reverse osmosis drinking water delivered to the house is $45 to $70 per month. In addition to that, I'm also paying for my regular water bill that is contaminated with PFAS. Thank you, Chemours DuPont. Right now, Chemours has $5 billion in revenue last year. They certainly can afford to eliminate all of the PFAS in our environment that comes from their plant. Their slick PR publication bill that airs nightly is almost nauseating in that they are trying to paint themselves as the good guys. This is a nefarious company and a nefarious corporation, which if you, the DEQ, give them any wiggle room, as they have done with PFAS, you see where they drove a semi through the mouse hole. The other issue could be that right now we have 500,000 residents full time, but our summer visitors are completely unaware of the contamination in the drinking water. When I polled the local rental establishments here at Ocean Isle and Sunset Beach, not a single one discloses to their renters that your drinking water contains contaminated substances, Gen X and PFAS. Have a nice vacation. The impact that information would have on our local economy, I mean, a billboard up there on the way down to the beach saying that your visit, don't drink the water, might have an economic impact on people that we need our livelihood. We live by the summer residents that come and visit us. My hope would be that the DEQ would not allow any contaminants to come from the Chemours plant. And the fact that these folks are still operating shows that they have a disdain for this process. They do not care what they're doing, only that they got caught. And now they're trying to paint a picture that will be most appealing. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Brian. All right, our next speaker is Roger Shaw, or Shew. S-H-E-W.
Hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, my name is Roger Shew. I'm a geologist at UNC Wilmington, but my comments tonight are my own. According to EPA's website regarding MPDES permitted states, effluent limitations serve as the primary mechanism in MPDES permits for controlling discharges of pollutants to receiving waters. When developing effluent limitations for the permit, a permit must consider limits based on both the technology available to control the pollutants and limits that are protective of the water quality standards of the receiving water. Well, based on the data available to us, I don't believe that the currently proposed draft permit meets those criteria. First, technology exists in multiple ways to control the effluent down to non-detect limits, including properly maintained granular activated carbon, reverse osmosis, and storage and treatment on site. All of these would or could then meet the second goal of having effluent limits that are protective of water quality standards, or the health advisory levels of 10, 0.03, and 0.04004 parts per trillion for Gen X, PFAS, and PFOA. These were set by EPA on June 15th of this year. And according to a recent DEQ news release, the new federal health advisory will now replace the state health goals. Therefore, the health advisory of 10 parts per trillion should be the minimum effluent standard for Gen X, not 120 parts per trillion as proposed in the draft permit. These new health advisory limits for Gen X and for other per and polyfluoroalkyl substances should also be utilized in reference dose calculations for chronic and subchronic exposure as well. We know from EPA's toxicity assessments, which support the aforementioned health advisory levels, and from recent studies that these emerging contaminants, even at very low levels, have been implicated in health effects such as immune system suppression and negative impacts on liver, kidneys, and potentially thyroid cancer. Information and guidance on regulations and health advisories have been slow in coming since 2017, when we found out we were being treated as a lab experiment for years. I am tired, and most of the residents in this area are tired of this continual battle with water treatment concerns, stress at not knowing all the facts, and potential health impacts with our water. It should not be the responsibility of our water treatment plants like Brunswick Northwest Water Treatment nor Cape Fear Public Utility to fund the cleanup of these waters. I applaud these entities for being proactive to make our water safe, but let's face it, the public will be paying for the RO and GAC treatments at those facilities. You have it in your power to do the right thing with the current health advisory levels posted by EPA. You can make our waters protective for our health with a permit that ensures our health and assigns the responsibility for water cleanup to those responsible for the pollution, which is Chemours. Lower effluent contaminant requirements to non-detect and strict monthly testing requirements with no exceptions or grace periods to the next month for testing should be the requirements in your permit. I'd like to thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker is Jesse Jackson Jr.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Jesse Jackson Jr. I'm representing my child. I think it's interesting that it has been brought up since we're in tourist season, kind of thinking about the movie Jaws. Is it safe to swim in the water? I feel that this is something that the people that come here should know about. Unfortunately, I got to also agree with a couple of people. I really feel that DEQ is pushing for approval of this permit. I don't feel that that's correct, and it really hurts my heart that it's looking that way. The draft permit does not meet the requirements nor the intent of the NPDES permit. The newest EPA standards that have just been released should be applied across the board, from the workers caught inside of this facility to the affected residents and to the remediation system being used to clean up this criminal activity. As we all know, there is no engineering for a high rainfall event, much less a hurricane. So all these thoughts about trying to make it bigger and better, that's really not going to work. Now I'm hearing about testing for heavy metals and other things, and every day we learn about something else that's coming out of this place. It's really disappointing. Learning more about this iron issue that may affect the treatment system. We have high iron content water here. If this is going to be an issue, then I feel that it is incumbent upon DEQ to figure this out. I wish that we could have a closed loop system. I don't want to give this facility another drop of North Carolina water. All we're doing is a Band-Aid right now.
1 minute.
I cannot find in the draft permit where we're shutting down this facility. I feel that it should be shut down. My vote is no on this draft permit. A remediation system, we have a tough time cleaning up a gas station in eastern North Carolina, and hydrocarbons float. This stuff mixes in water better than whiskey. It is everywhere. And y'all have got one line drawn a mile long, biggest thing ever, and it's only controlling one side. No one has even addressed proper disposal of the activated carbon once it becomes a hazardous material in these beds. I don't want this waste in North Carolina. I don't want it in the South. We don't want it here. 99% is not good enough. There was a fire one time at a hardware store here in North Carolina, and DEQ was on scene and telling the fire department to stop putting water on the fire. That's what water quality said. And air quality was saying put the fire out, and water quality was saying we got too much runoff. Now, at some point, I don't care who's talking, but you as agencies need to figure this problem out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before we move on to see if there are other speakers, I wanted to go back to Michael Waters. Can you submit your comments in full electronically since we're having so much trouble hearing you? I just wanted to make sure you.
I actually switched to a phone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to reiterate, he just pointed out, one of our biggest concerns about the people by the dam, by where they're putting that dam is, you have a dam on the riverside, you have a dam a little bit by Willis Creek and down by the old outfall 003. If you study hydrology, that goes 40 feet below sea level. The clay bed is about 80 feet below sea level. You're backing up water. When water is backed up behind the dam, then it goes somewhere. It follows the aquifers. You look at the corrective measures study from 2016, and it tells you on that facility there's a plume of contamination in the groundwater under the plant. That's why you have seeps with the contaminants getting into the river. That means, from our understanding, a corrective action plan and a corrective measure study should have been done to address how they're going to remediate the water without contaminating us. I've seen no environmental assessment of how that water is not going to back up, go into our aquifers, and a lot of us are superficial aquifer, not the Upper Cape Fear, which means it will contaminate our wells, those that are directly around the facility. The second thing is, a guy addressed of what if there's a flood type situation of the hurricanes. Just for your last word on Hurricane Mitchell, the water was 25 feet above the banks of the river by that facility. That wall is not going to go high enough if they're planning on backing up above the ground. So our context is, one, a corrective action plan should have been done. It's correct. 10 parts per trillion going into the river is absolutely horrendous. If this was Flint, Michigan, people would be going to jail. So our concern, is follow the laws. We also agree that it sounds like DEQ is pushing for this permit to be approved. People say, why didn't they ever shut down the facility when there were all of the other violations that occurred that they were fined for? DEQ held all the way till January until the governor's capability to shut the facility expired. That's our comments.
Okay, thank you. We can go back and see if Terry Mann is able to join us. Terry, are you there?
I don't see any hands up in the call-in users.
Yeah, I don't either.
And I don't see Terry on the list.
Okay. All right, well, we've come to the end of everyone that's registered to speak. If anyone else would like a turn at speaking, please raise your hand.
More.
All right, give me a second here. I'm looking through the list of folks for hands.
I don't see any. If you'd like to speak, please raise your hand. And you're still welcome to submit comments. Please submit comments.
And remember, if you're on your phone and you want to raise your hand, press *3. Right. I do not see any hands up.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll move on. Thank you, everyone.
Actually, I do.
You do?
John C. Lang here.
Okay.
I just had a real quick comment. I think everybody tonight has really covered a lot of really good ground. The one thing that I haven't heard covered is the talk about the long-term maintenance of this wall. And so nobody's really talking about, in 20 or 30 years, who's going to be maintaining this wall, and does Chemours have money set aside for the long-term maintenance of this? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, the first time I've heard that question in both hearings. Anyone else have any questions? Or want to speak? Not questions. Want to have a speaking time?
I'll check one more time here.
Yeah. And that's fine.
Okay.
That's
No
it.
more.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for your respectful attention during this hearing, and thank you for the comments. And please consider sending in your written comments. You have until tomorrow at 6 p.m. After that time, all that information will be compiled into a hearing officer's report, and I'll make a recommendation regarding that final decision for the permit and/or proposed treatment system to the Director, Richard Rogers, at the Division of Water Resources. So this concludes the public hearing for the proposed permit and groundwater treatment system at the Chemours Fayetteville Works facility in Bladen County. Thank you so much for your time and your input. Have a great night.